Good evening, everyone. My name is Maheshwaran. I'm going to talk about how artificial intelligence concepts are being applied in the field of sports analytics. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank all of you for attending the webinar, and I would also like to thank Geeta for organizing the webinar. A quick introduction about myself. I'm working in IIT Madras on research projects in data science. Prior to this, I worked in Gyan Data on a cricket analytics project for ESPN Cricket Info. I'll talk about the project and much more.
In general, the field of analytics has been very popular over the past couple of decades because it has been successfully applied to solve problems in various domains like finance, biotechnology, manufacturing, and so on. And sports is a domain where there is a lot of opportunity to collect data and analyze data and create value out of data. So it is not surprising that the field of analytics is starting to have an impact in sports as well. Now, sports analytics applications can be categorized under two types. The first one is on-field analytics, and the second type is off-field analytics. I'll talk about on-field analytics now. The on-field analytics applications help in making well-informed decisions that directly influence the player or the team of interest. The applications are focused towards increasing the probability of winning. Some of the examples include selecting the best team, making match-winning decisions during a live game, and efficient tracking of player performance. I'll talk about each one as we go along. Yeah. First, I'll talk about Moneyball. Moneyball is arguably the most iconic sports analytics example. It is an example of how data science is used in selecting teams. Moneyball is actually a book that is authored by Michael Lewis on the data-driven strategies used by Billy Beane for his baseball team, Oakland Athletics. The team is also known as the Oakland A's. The movie Moneyball, which released in 2011, was also based on this book. So I'll give you a background about Moneyball. The Oakland A's were among the poorest teams in Major League Baseball in terms of their budget. They were the third lowest. They had the third lowest budget among the 30 teams. And before their 2002 season, three of their star players left the team. But the problem was since the Oakland A's were a poor team, they did not have the budget to buy players of similar caliber. So they couldn't find like for like replacements for the players with the budget they had. The rest of the book talks about how Billy Beane and his assistant Paul used data analytics to overcome this recruitment challenge and build a successful sports team. Now, how is success defined? Generally, if a team makes it to the playoffs in a season, the team is said to have a successful season. So, what does a team do in order to reach a playoff? It is on average, it is found that teams had to win 95 games in a season to qualify for the playoffs. So, how does a team win 95 games in a season? Billy and Paul established that a team had to score 135 more runs than they concede to win 95 games. This 135 is also called the margin. That is the number of runs scored minus the number of runs conceded. So the margin had to be at least 135 runs in order to win 95 games. Let us see how they arrived at this number 135 using linear regression. So this data is the wins versus margin data for the baseball leagues from 1997 to 2001. So it consists of data worth of 5 years. As you can see, the wins correlate well with the margin, and we fit a linear regression model here. Here we fit y is equal to ax plus b, and the model that we get is wins is equal to 0.105 times margin plus 80.90. So from this equation, if you plug in 95 to the wins, you get that the margin should be 90 minus 80.9 divided by 0.105. That it turns out to be approximately 135. So this is how Billy and Paul deduced that you had to achieve a margin of 135 runs to win 95 games. Now, how do they achieve a margin of 135, or how do they maximize their margin? So margin is essentially runs scored minus runs conceded. So you have to maximize margin by maximizing the runs scored and minimizing the runs conceded. Now, the common perception among the baseball insiders was that batsmen with better batting average were more successful. But they didn't have the money to buy batsmen with high batting average, because the batsmen with high batting average were in high demand, so they were very expensive. So they had to buy a batsman because they had to find replacements. So using upon extensive statistical analysis, Billy and Paul established that other than batting average, the metrics on base percentage and slugging percentage were also indicative of a batsman's success. And the linear regression model for the runs scored by a team against or based on the on base percentage and slugging percentage is this one. So uh, this is the relation we obtained from linear regression. And something that they noticed was these metrics, the on base percentage and the slugging percentage, were very undervalued, meaning that the players or batsmen who had very good values in these metrics weren't in high demand and they weren't expensive. So they went ahead to buy the batsmen who had good on base percentage and slugging percentage. Now, based on the team that they assembled, the overall on-base percentage for the Oakland Athletics was 1.0339, and the slugging percentage value was 0.430. So the prediction for the runs scored by the Oakland Athletics in the year 2002 was 800. This is obtained from the linear regression model we saw before. Similarly, for evaluating pitchers, they found that the opponent's on-base percentage and opponent's slugging percentage were undervalued metrics. Meaning, people so basically, if the opponent's on-base percentage and opponent's slugging percentage is low, means the pitcher is very good. So even these metrics were undervalued, meaning the pitchers who had opponent's on-base percentage and opponent's slugging percentage with low values weren't very expensive because they weren't in demand. So the runs conceded based on the runs conceded versus the opponent's on-base percentage and opponent's slugging percentage is this equation. This is also obtained from linear regression. And the opponent's on-base percentage for A's was 0.307 and their slugging percentage was 0.373. So the prediction for the runs conceded by the A's in the 2002 season was 611. This we plug in the values in this equation and we arrive at this number. Therefore, the predicted margin for the A's in 2002 season was 189, that is 800 minus 611, and their expected number of wins, which we derived initially, was 100. That's 100.105 into 189 plus 80.90. Now, since the A's were expected to win more than 95 games, Billy and Paul were confident that the A's would qualify for the playoffs. So this is the results from the 2002 season. The runs that were scored by A was 800. The runs conceded was 653, and the number of wins was 103. We predicted 800, 611, and 100 respectively. So, and they actually made it to the playoffs in the 2002 season. Coming to the impact of Moneyball. So the A's with a budget of 44 million were competitive with big teams like the New York Yankees, who spent over 125 million that season. So this popularized the field of sports analytics. Now, instead of solely relying on intuition and gut feel, teams now take decisions based on extensive statistical analysis. Now, almost every professional sports team is investing heavily in collecting data and also has an analytics group to analyze the data. Now, this is the second example for on-field analytics, which is making decisions during a live game. Many sports have an AI-based simulator that can simulate the remainder of the match given from the current scenario. So with this, it's possible to answer questions like which batsman should be sent in next, which bowler should bowl the next over, or in football, which player should be substituted by which player. I'll give an example. Assume that India are batting and India are 120 for 1 at the end of 15 overs. let's say the second wicket falls. Now, since only two wickets have fallen, there are lots of options for. Let's assume this is a T20 game I'm talking about. Uh, since there are only two wickets have fallen, India have actually lots of options. They would actually have 4 to 5 options to uh, 4 to 5 options for the next batsman. So now that you have a simulator, if you have a simulator, you can estimate the final score for each of the batsmen. So say if Rishabh Pant goes to bat, the predicted score is 185, and the win probability is 0.8. If Hardik Pandya goes to bat next, the predicted score is 180, and the win probability is 0.7, and so on. So from this, uh, we can say that sending in Rishabh Pant is the best decision, because sending him next would give the highest predicted score. And similarly, this similar approach can be used in football for deciding which player should replace which player. And the final example of on-field analytics I'm going to talk about is the tracking of player performances. So in sports like football, tracking events like shots, passes, etc., is very labor intensive. It requires people watching the entire game and manually logging the players' actions. It's here that computer vision algorithms are useful. The computer vision algorithms can be trained on historical video footage data, and they can learn to detect and identify players and relevant and record their relevant statistics, like the accuracy of the shot, or accuracy of the pass, or speed of the shot, speed of the pass, etc. So here, AI makes the process of extracting relevant information from the videos much more efficient. The extracted information can then be used by the teams to evaluate players before buying them, or the coaches can use this data to come up with customized coaching strategies. Next, I'll talk about off-field analytics. Now, off-field analytics do not directly influence the performance of the players and the team. They focus purely on the business side of sports. Some of the examples include online fan engagement, dynamic ticket pricing, and efficient broadcasting and coverage. I'll talk about online fan engagement now. So fans in generally are fascinated by the numbers related to their favorite sports. They are curious to know about which player is the best, which team is likely to win the match, which player had the most impact, which player was the luckiest, and other interesting analysis. And it has been found that data-driven content attracts fans to a sports website, and the sports website can. So other companies will be interested in advertising in the sports website, and in this way, the sports website generates advertising revenue. So one such project is the Superstats, which I worked on when I was in Gyan Data. This is a project we worked on for ESPN Cricinfo. They are a leading cricket news website. The Superstats is a cricket analytics platform developed by Gyan Data for ESPN Cricinfo. It consists of 3 modules, namely Forecaster, Luck Index, and Smart Stats. Now, the forecaster is used for predicting the final score of an ongoing innings and the win probabilities of the teams using statistical and machine learning models. So, information used for predicting the final score is the match situation. For capturing the match situation, we use what the current score is, what the run rate is, the number of wickets fallen, and the number of balls remaining. And we also use the career statistics of the players involved, both in the batting team and the bowling team. So for players in the batting team, we use their career run score, career batting average, career strike rate, career death over strike rate. And for the players in the bowling team, we use career balls bowled, dismissal rate, economy rate, and death over economy. We also take into account the statistics of the players in the ongoing innings. For the batting team, we look at how many runs they've already scored, what is the strike rate at which they've scored the runs, whether the batsman has been dismissed or not. And for the bowling team, we use the runs conceded, the economy rate at which they've been bowling in this match, and the wickets taken by the bowlers in the match. So based on all this, we predict the final score of an innings, and using that, predicted final score, we estimate the win probabilities for the teams that are playing the match. So these are two examples. On the left, India were, this is the left, the example in the left is from the India versus Pakistan match in the 2019 World Cup. India were 105 for no loss at the end of 20 overs. At the time, the forecaster projected that India will reach 341. India actually ended up getting 336 for 5 at the end of 50 overs. And the example on the right is from the Bangladesh versus West Indies game in the 2019 World Cup. The Bangladesh were 66 for 3 at the end of 25 overs, and they were chasing a target of 322. At that time, the forecaster predicted that the Bangladesh would win the match with a probability of 63%. And in the end, Bangladesh won the match by 7 wickets. So these are two examples of how the forecaster was used to predict scores and probabilities. Now, the second module is luck index. The luck index quantifies the luck of lucky events on the final score. So, by lucky events, I mean the drop catches, the missed runouts and stumpings, umpiring errors, etc. So, for all the luck events in the match, the luck index algorithm will replace the event with the opposite of the event and simulate the game. The difference between the actual score and the score obtained through simulation is the luck value of that event in terms of runs. I'll show you an example. So this is from this example is from the Kolkata Knight Riders versus Kings 11 Punjab game in IPL 2019. So Andre Russell was bowled of a no ball in the Kings 11 KKR versus Punjab game, and he was bowled of a no ball in the 17th over. Before the no ball, KKR were 161 for 3 at the end of at the end of 17 overs, and Russell was on 3 or 4 balls. After that no ball, KKR actually went on to score 218 for 4, and Russell scored 48 of 17. So after that no ball, Russell actually scored 45 of the 13 balls. So that no ball is indeed a crucial moment in the match, and that turned out to be a lucky event for Kolkata Knight Riders. So what is the luck value of that event? We find that by predicting the score without Russell. So we assume that KKR were 161 for 4 at the end of 17 overs. We dismiss Russell artificially, and we estimate what the score would have been. That prediction is 189. So the luck value of that drop catch is 218, which KKR actually scored in the match, minus 189. So because of that no ball, KKR actually went on to score 29 more runs than what they would have scored without the no ball. Yeah. So now that we have a way to find the luck value of every event, it is possible to aggregate the luck value of every event and find out which was the luckier team in the match. Let's say you have 5 luck events in a match. You calculate the luck value of the 5 events in terms of runs, and you aggregate the luck values, and say that number is L. Okay, and let's assume that the winning team won the match by M runs and were lucky by L runs. Now, if the team batting first won the match, then M is the actual margin of victory. So, say if let's say the team batting first scored 320 and the team batting second scored 240, then M is actually 80. If the team batting second won the match, then M is the difference between the projected score at the end of the innings and the first inning score. So let's say the target for the second innings was 240, and the team batting second chased the target in 40 overs. We assume that we calculate margin for in this case by assuming that the team batting second will bat all the 50 overs. They'll keep on batting even after chasing the target. So that score minus the first inning score. So say the team would have scored 320 in the second innings, and the first inning score was 240, the margin would have been 80. Okay, so we get the margin and luck total aggregate luck value for every match and do this. If the margin is less than the luck, if margin is less than the luck, means that luck played an important role in the match. If not for this lucky events, the result would have been the other way around. If the margin was already greater than the total luck value, it means that the team has won convincingly, even though they were lucky. The the result would not have changed even if those lucky events hadn't happened. If the margin was equal to luck, it means that the result would have been a tie. Meaning, let's say a team won the match by 5 runs, so 5 is a margin, and let's say the team was also lucky by 5 runs. Means that you subtract those 5 runs, and the result would have been a tie. So we did this analysis for every game in IPL 2019, and we found that some of the results would have flipped. Some of the results flipped. Something that is interesting is that the Rajasthan Royals actually in the actual tournament got only 11 points, whereas you take all the luck events and you do the flipping. It turns out that Rajasthan Royals would have got 15 points, and they would have actually made it to the playoffs. So, using data science, we were able to determine that Rajasthan Royals were unlucky in IPL 2019. And the third module that comes under Super Stats is the Smart Stats. Smart Stats are a set of metrics that analyze that for in-depth analysis of players' batting and bowling performances. So every run scored or wicket taken is evaluated based on based on several parameters, so that we get the true value of that performance. Under Smart Stats, we have 3 metrics. The first one is smart runs. The second one is smart wickets, and the third one is the impact score. First, I'll talk about smart runs. Smart runs are the true value of the runs scored by a batsman or the runs conceded by a bowler. The smart runs actually account for the strike rate or the economy rate at which the batsman or the bowler played, the pressure on the batsman or the bowler, the match run rate on the match run rate, and the phase of the innings in which the player played. So, let's see the first factor, the strike rate. If a batsman scores 50 of 35, if a batsman scores 50 of 40 balls and another batsman scores 50 of 25 balls, clearly the batsman who scored 50 of 25, the innings of the batsman who scored 50 of 25 is much more valuable than the 50 of 40. So we have to value that more. And in the second case, let's say batsman has scored the runs when I'm talking about pressure. Let's say the batsman has scored his runs when the required run rate is over 12, and compare it. Let's say the batsman has scored 50 runs when the required run rate is over 12 and won the match for his team. And let's say in the other case, a batsman scored 50 runs when the required run rate was close to 6. So clearly, the innings which was scored when innings which was played when the required run rate was over 12 is much more valuable than the innings which was played when the required run rate was close to 6. And the third factor is the match run rate. So scoring at a strike rate of 160 when others score at a strike rate of say 130 is much more valuable than scoring at a strike rate of 160 when others score at a strike rate of 200. So by scoring at 160 in a match when others are scoring at a strike rate of 200, you are actually performing poorly compared to others. And the phase of the innings in which the player performed. So if you're playing in the power, if a bowler is bowling in the death overs and he maintains an economy of 6, and there's another bowler who bowls in the middle overs, predominantly in the middle overs, and he also maintains an economy of 6. But the bowler who is maintaining an economy of 6 is doing much better because he's bowling all the tough overs. Death overs are typically tough for bowlers. So these are the factors that we use to evaluate the runs scored and conceded by the players. So I'll show you 2 examples here. The example on the left is from the match between Kings XI Punjab and Mumbai Indians in IPL 2019. Here, KL Rahul scored 71 runs of 57 balls, and Mayank Agarwal scored 43 runs of 21 balls. Now, clearly, according to conventional runs, KL Rahul is ahead of Mayank Agarwal by 28 runs. But if you look at the strike rate, KL Rahul has scored at a strike rate of approximately 120, and Mayank Agarwal has scored at a strike rate of over 200. So the Mayank Agrawal's innings is much more valuable because he was the one. His innings was the one that turned the match in Punjab's favor. In fact, when Mayank Agrawal came out to bat, the required run rate was over 10, and Rahul was actually giving strike to Mayank Agrawal, while Mayank Agrawal was going for the boundaries. So the innings that Mayank Agarwal played was the one that lifted the pressure of Kings XI Punjab and made them win the match. So this is reflected by the smart runs value of the innings. Mayank Agarwal's 43 of 21 is worth 59 smart runs, whereas KL Rahul's 71 not out of 57 balls is worth 58 smart runs. So though KL Rahul leads Mayank Agarwal by 28 runs here, Mayank Agarwal has more smart runs than KL Rahul. And in the same match, we compared the smart economy rates of the two players. So R. Ashwin bowled predominantly in the power play and 1 over in the death overs, and he's maintained an economy of 6.5. And M. Ashwin has bowled in the middle overs, and he maintained an economy of 6.25. Clearly, R. Ashwin has done a tougher job because he's bowled when there were fielding restrictions, and he's maintained an economy of 6.5. So his performance is much more valuable than M. Ashwin's performance. So that is reflected in the smart economy. That is the smart runs conceded divided by the number of overs. So Ashwin's smart economy rate is 3.75, and M. Ashwin's smart economy rate is 5. So this is the aggregate smart runs for smart runs and smart economy rates for IPL 2019. We all know that David Warner scored 692 runs and was the orange cap winner in IPL 2019. But Russell was actually the player of the tournament. He scored 510 runs, and most of his runs came at a very good strike rate. I think his strike rate was over 200 in the tournament, and he scored those runs when the required run rate was over 10 or sometimes even more than 13, 14. So he scored 510 runs at a very good strike rate at when the under high pressure, and has actually won matches for his side. So his runs were much more valuable. His runs should be on par with, if not much more valuable, at least be on par with David Warner. Even though in terms of runs, David Warner leads Russell by 182 runs. And actually, smart runs reflect that. According to smart runs, both Andre Russell and David Warner scored 684 runs. So smart runs has accounted for the pressure under which Russell batted, the strike rate under which Russell batted, and this match-winning innings. And this innings actually went on to win matches for his side. So all that is accounted for in smart runs, and this shows that Russell was actually among the best batsmen in the tournament. And a similar thing for smart economy. If you look at the best economy rates in the tournament, it is actually led by Ravindra Jadeja. He maintained an economy of 6.44 throughout the tournament. But under smart economy rate, he comes out at number 5. This is because Ravindra Jadeja actually bowled most of his overs in Chennai, where the match run rate was actually very low. So it was all the conditions in which he bowled were bowler friendly, meaning it was easier for bowlers to bowl, and he's maintained an economy of 6.44. And also, he being a spin bowler, he largely bowled in the middle overs. Whereas if you look at the player who has the best smart economy rate, he maintained an actual economy rate of 6.77. But Jofra Archer bowled all the difficult overs for all the difficult overs in the match. He bowled the power play. He bowled 2 overs in the power play and 2 overs in the death almost every match. And yet he's maintained an economy rate of 6.77. So his performance is clearly better than Ravindra Jadeja, and smart economy rate uh, shows that. Accounts for all that. It accounts for the conditions in which the players bowled, and the run rate of the matches, the batting condition, or the conditions that the playing conditions of the matches in which the players bowled. The next metric is smart wickets. Now, if you look at a typical scorecard, you don't the wickets don't differentiate between whether a batsman is a good, whether the wicket is of a good batsman or a tail ender. Even if you take one wicket of a tail ender and one wicket of a top order batsman or a very good batsman like Virat Kohli, it's still recorded as one wicket. So smart wickets uh, are the true value of a wicket by accounting for the following information. So you consider the quality of the batsman that was dismissed, and you look at the runs saved due to the wickets. So if a batsman is dismissed very early in the innings, say Virat Kohli is dismissed for a duck, that wicket should have much more value than Virat Kohli being dismissed when he's already scored 80 and the match is in the 19th over or 20th over. And it also accounts for the pressure on the bowler. Let's say the match is there is a tight run chase, and a wicket would greatly benefit the team. It would increase the win probability of the team, of the bowling team, a lot. Means that wicket is actually valuable. So it also accounts for the pressure on the bowler. So the smart wickets are such that every wicket will the smart wicket value will for a wicket will take any value from 0 to 2. So if a wicket is if it's a tail ender wicket, when if a bowler takes a wicket of a tail ender in a match when there is no pressure at all, it's actually, and in the end of the innings it will actually be close to 0. And let's say a bowler takes the wicket of a very good batsman, let's say Virat Kohli, at the start of the innings, and at a time when at where there is a lot of pressure on the bowler. So at that time, the smart wicket value will be close to 2. So here I have two examples. On the left, it shows that Akshar Patel and Sandeep Sharma both got 3 wickets in the match. The match I'm talking about is the Punjab versus Bangalore match in IPL 2017. In that match, Akshar Patel dismissed Shane Watson, Pawan Negi, and Samuel Badri. And actually, apart from Shane Watson, Pawan Negi and Samuel Badri are lower order batsmen, and Samuel Badri is actually a tail ender. And whereas Sandeep Sharma dismissed the 3 top batsmen in the team, Chris Gale, Virat Kohli, and AB de Villiers. So clearly, though the scorecard says that both have taken equal number of wickets, Sandeep Sharma's wickets are much more valuable than Akshar Patel's wickets. And since he dismissed those batsmen very early in the innings, Kings XI Punjab actually went on to win the game. Uh, so that is reflected by the smart wicket value. The 3 wickets of Sandeep Sharma are worth 4.86, and the 3 wickets of Akshar Patel are worth 2.85. And the example on the right is the total smart wickets of bowlers in IPL 2019. So you can see that Deepak Chahar leads the chart, whereas he's taken only 22 wickets. According to if you look at the conventional wickets, he'll be the third after Imran Tahir, Kagiso Rabada, and Deepak Chahar will be third. Whereas according to smart wickets, he's on top. This is because Deepak Chahar bowled in the power play and the death, and he took he took early wickets of very good batsmen. Like he dismissed Virat Kohli twice, he dismissed Chris Lynn, and so he dismissed a lot of top order players throughout the tournament. And also, Kagiso Rabada, though he had 25 wickets, some of the a significant number of those 25 wickets were that of lower order batsmen and tail enders. So smart wickets reveal that difference, the difference in the quality of the wickets taken by both Deepak Chahar and Kagiso Rabada. Now, the third metric we have is the impact score. The impact score is quantifies the overall performance of a player by taking into account the number of smart runs he scored, the smart runs, smart economy rate. If he's bowled, the smart economy rate and the smart wickets he's took. So uh, so the player with the highest impact score can be considered to be the man of the match according to Smart Stats. And this impact score, if scaled to 100, you get the contribution percentage to the team. So I'll show you two examples. On the left, the example on the left is from the Delhi Capitals versus Bangalore game in IPL 2019. In that game, Sherfane Rutherford scored 28 not out of 13 balls, and he bowled over, picked up the wicket of AB de Villiers, and conceded just 6 runs. And Akshar Patel scored 16 not out of 9 balls. He bowled 4 overs. He conceded and produced figures of 1 for 26. And Shreyas Iyer just batted and he scored 52 of 37. Now, whose performance is the most valuable? According to Smart Stats, it's Sherfane Rutherford because he scored 28 of 13. That came at a very good strike rate, and he also He also got the key wicket of AB de Villiers. So, Smart Stats account for a lot of parameters in determining who the best player in the match was. And and in fact, the contribution percentage can be negative as well. On the right, we see that Hardik Pandya scored in the match between Mumbai Indians and RCB in IPL 2019. We see that Hardik Pandya scored 37 of 16, and he got a wicket for one, had a bowling figures of 1 for 21. And Krunal Pandya scored 11 of 21 balls, and he had a figures of 0 for 10. I think he just bowled 1 over in that match. So clearly, this is a very poor batting innings by T20 standards. And also in the 1 over he bowled, he conceded 10 runs. So that is a very poor performance. So Smart Stats actually quantifies how bad that performance was. And in contrast, this 37 of 16 was actually the match-winning innings for Mumbai Indians. Hardik Pandya played this innings when the match was actually tight, and he finished off the game. So this package is worth. He contributed 38.5% to Mumbai Indians win. So this is the aggregate impact score for the entire tournament. The top performance from IPL 2019 was Hardik Pandya's 91 of 34 and 1 for 31 against KKR. That has an impact score of 204. And in the same game, Andre Russell played an innings of 80 of 40 and had a bowling figures of 2 for 25. That has an impact score of 186.7. So and the most valuable player was Andre Russell, Smart Stats, according to Smart Stats, his impact score was 1013, and the second most valuable player was Hardik Pandya. His impact score was 757, and even in the real tournament, the organizers awarded Andre Russell the Player of the Tournament award. So, using algorithms, it is possible to determine which player was the best. Which player performed the best, even though they don't top the most runs or most wickets column. We're able to see that we're able to get who the best player in the tournament was. So that was about Super Stats. The next off-field analytics example is dynamic ticket pricing. So dynamic ticket pricing is used by organizers to maximize the stadium attendance and revenue. So the demand for the tickets is predicted based on factors like how well the home team is doing and who the opposition team is, and whether what type of match it is, if it's a playoff or not. So if the home team is playing very well, naturally fans would be interested in watching the match or coming to the match. So demand will be high. And same for opposition team strength. If the opposition has some star players, the demand for the tickets will be high. And similarly, for a playoff match, the demand for the tickets will be high. And there are also other factors like whether the match was held on a weekday or a weekend, and so on. So if you have a demand forecasting model that predicts the demand of the tickets, it is possible you can then go ahead and set the prices of the tickets so that your overall revenue is maximized. And in fact, so for example, if the demand is very high, you can set the ticket prices at a high rate, uh, and people will be willing to buy because the demand is high, and vice versa. If the demand is low, you set the ticket price at a low rate, so that your revenue would be maximized. And in fact, the San Francisco Giants is a team in in Major League Baseball. They experimented this dynamic ticket pricing for about 100 for about 2,000 seats in their stadium in 2010. Their demand forecasting model incorporated about 120 variables. In that season, they sold 25,000 more tickets than they did in the previous season, and they obtained an additional revenue of $500,000. The next off-field analytics example is efficient broadcasting and coverage. So the AI concepts like natural language processing and computer vision help in making sports broadcasting and coverage more efficient. For example, NLP-based algorithms are being used for generating articles about matches. So these algorithms are used for matches that typically are not high stake. They don't send in any reporters to watch the match and write about the match. It's all done by algorithms. So the Associated Press news service covers about 13 minor leagues with 142 games using NLP-based algorithms. So it's since there, so see, if there are 13 leagues and so many teams playing, it's impossible for a company to have so many reporters reporting the writing articles about each game. So it's everything is becoming efficient now with NLP based algorithms. And similarly, Wimbledon and IBM have partnered to build an AI system that generates the highlights package of a tennis match. The system generates the highlights package within 2 minutes, whereas an editor would require a couple of hours going through the entire match and picking the best moments. This system uses a combination of computer vision and audio recognition algorithms to identify and curate key moments in a match. Yeah, that was about off-field analytics. I'd like to conclude by talking about the skills that are required while working in sports analytics. First and foremost, one must have a very deep understanding of the sport. Even if if you're very strong in data science, but you don't have an understanding about the sport, it's impossible for it's impossible for you to contribute, make any meaningful contributions. And apart from that, it's important to have a good knowledge of statistics and machine learning. And if you are going to be working on video data, you need to be well versed with computer vision algorithms. And if you're going to work on the commentary or sports articles, you need to know about natural language processing. And it's also important that you have proficiency in programming languages like Python and R, so that you are able to apply the mathematical concepts and solve the problem at hand. And apart from this, it's important to have the ability to pick up any relevant skills while working on the project. Because many people don't start off with all the skills before working on any project, so it's important that that you pick up the skills while working on the project. Yeah, that was the presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Maheshwaran, for giving us a overall idea on how that is how this data science is applied in sports. Maheshwaran, there is one doubt. So the participant has posed. So how does the software detect the role accomplished by a player? Suppose in 2019, in many games, Shubman Gill played the role of cheat anchor, while Russell was the aggressor. Or somebody played a slow innings when situation was 29 of 5 when he came to bat, and 15 was the left to bat.
So when Shubman Gill is playing an innings when the team is 29 for 5, the pressure on Shubman Gill is going to be high. So since Shubman Gill is playing an innings, scoring runs when there is a lot of pressure, so his runs will automatically be valued more than what he scores. Suppose if he scores 50 or 40 balls, given that the team was 29 for 5 before he played the innings, his smart runs would be more than 50, maybe 60 or something. I hope that answers the doubt.
So the next question is, sir, what was the accuracy achieved by various use cases you explained? Where can we read or explore more about the details?
Okay, I actually talked about different use cases here. You'll have to Google about each of them to find out what their accuracies were. Sometimes people do not report the accuracies also. If it's so sometimes if it's a research work, people generally report the accuracy. But if it's something developed by a company, they don't generally report the accuracy. They just say what variables were used and were considered for modeling.
Sir, can you comment on video analysis?
So video analysis, it's very generic, but so I'll tell you I'll tell you one use case of video analytics. So people go through. I mean, without any video analytics, people would have to track each player and note down what they're doing. But with video analytics, you have computer vision algorithms. You can annotate the videos. So yes, you can mark the. Suppose say a player is taking a shot or player is making a pass. At that point in time in the video, you can mark that the player is taking a shot or playing making a pass, so that you train the algorithm to recognize that the player is taking a shot or taking a pass. So using this supervised learning, you can uh, make the systems understand about the different events involved.
Can we get smart stats in Google for IPL 2019?
You can get the overall smart stats numbers. You won't get match by match because ESPN, it's up to ESPN to publish it. We've done it for ESPN, but they've only put it out for the overall tournament, and you'll get the top 10 or top 15. There are articles for that in ESPN Info.
Is there a real-time automated commentary exist?
I don't think that I'm not aware of that, but as I said earlier, there are NLP algorithms that exist for automated journalism. They look at they look at the video, or they look at this ball by ball data, and they generate stories about the match. Yeah, the team selection also depends on uh, the opposition. It's not that a team is going to fix a team is going to fix a particular 11 and play. You're going to play them throughout the tournament. Suppose, as you said, if the opposition team is having a lot of left-hand spinners, you will try to pack your team with at least two left-hand batsmen. So yeah, you're right. It's and if you pack your team with left-handers, your stats will automatically say that according to stats, the team with left-handers will be better because you're going to face a team with left-hand spinners.
So, sir, I'm Gaurav Shinkar. I'm pursuing my master's in data science and big data analytics. So, the question I wanted to ask is, what would you like? What would you suggest me when I'm entering into this field? I've learned all the tools and techniques which I require, but what would you suggest me so that I can get going into this field?
So by tools and techniques, what do you mean? You mean machine learning and statistics?
Yes, sir. I'm currently working on deep learning. What would be your suggestions based on whatever I've learned, like machine learning, statistics, and big data and Hadoop?
Okay, if you want to get into sports analytics, you need to identify a sport of interest, and then uh, look at what sports analytics companies are looking for. So you have to do. I mean, you have to pick skills that are relevant to what those companies are looking for. Sometimes so people would want expertise in video analytics. Sometimes people would want expertise in natural language processing. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, one last question from my side. Can you share what you are currently working on, or like what your focus is currently on? Like sport industry has completely changed from the previous structure. So can you just share with us what you are working on?
No, I'm not working in sports analytics. I worked in sports analytics last year. Now I'm working in IIT Madras on mechanical engineering and deep learning problems.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So I think participants does not have any doubts. So thank you, Mageshwaran, for the
Yeah,
wonderful
thank
webinar
you.
session.
Yeah, thank you for organizing it, and I thank everyone for attending the event.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we'll have some more webinars in the upcoming months. So we'll keep you posted. So you can always look our Gita website. So the more webinars will be coming in future. So we'll keep you posted. Yeah, thanks a lot to everybody. Thank you for joining this session. Have a great day.